And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you all for joining us. And so appreciate the time we had together at Miller's Mission. Thank you to everybody that stopped by and that donated and that made a difference. It was such a blessing to be a part of that. And before we get rolling here, let me give you the K-Millie cash code word. We only have a couple more days of this. Brought to you by EGT Solar, the Treasure Valley Solar Authority. Today's cash code word is pie. That's right, pie. And wouldn't it be great to get some pie right about now? So go to KIDOTalkRadio.com, log on, and pie. Your next cash code word from Kevin Miller is at 8:05 and then 3:05 with Sean Hannity. A lot going on today, but as I said before, I just wanted to thank everybody. And I have so much respect for people that are working outdoors, that are out in these elements all the time. You know, yesterday, I got to go home. I got to hang out. I did a lot of sleeping, went to church a few times. And it's just amazing the generosity of the folks here in the Treasure Valley, number one. And number two, just how challenging it is. And it wasn't even that cold this time around. To be out for a week at the Walmart. So, like I said, those that work outside, big ups to you. Thank you very much. We're joined by our great friend, Brian Crabtree, once again, conservative commentator. You catch him all the time in and around Town Hall and other outlets. Brian Crabtree is a rising and influential young voice in the conservative media and the host of the Brian Crabtree Show, heard on Atlanta's Biz 1190. Brian, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
So, I guess we should start with the president. He's in a Twitter war with LeVar Ball, and he's already taken on Marshawn Lynch for not standing during the national anthem. What do you make of this? Is there a method to this, or is this just the president acting like the regular folks?
Yeah, well, it's the president, I think, doing what people sitting on their couch were doing when this football player decided to sit for the national or kneel for the national anthem for the United States of America, his home country, and stand for Mexico. I mean, the Mexican anthem. If you think about oppression, look at the number of people that try to flee Mexico to get away from those oppressive conditions, a country so corrupt it's virtually run by the drug cartel, to come here to America. And they're defended for their illegal activity coming here, but we do understand why they want to come here, to get away from the oppression they face there. And he's standing for a national anthem for a country that is creating those kind of conditions and allowing those kind of conditions for their people. And he's kneeling on ours because there's a few cases of police brutality across the country over the course of time. I mean, it just makes no sense. It defies any logic of anyone with an IQ that's in the spectrum of sane.
Indeed. When we take a look at the big tax bills going on throughout Congress, Brian, what do you expect to happen this week?
I'm not real optimistic this will get done by the end of the year even. We don't have enough defections yet to say the bill is dead. Ron Johnson from Wisconsin could come back on. As I understand it, his big issue is the pass-through tax that is in some ways elevated under this bill, or at least it's one of the big issues that should be faced. And for your listeners that don't quite understand that, if you own an LLC, which is most of the small businesses in America, the people that really need the help. Yeah, we got to help big corporations that create jobs, but we really also have to help small business owners in America keep more of what they earn so they can either invest into their businesses or consume in the economy to get our GDP up. So when you look at this pass-through tax, it's a punitive tax that sort of makes it irrelevant to own a business. It's sort of like just being a sole proprietor. Pass-through taxes work on sole proprietors as well. And it really comes down to the level of FICA and Medicare and all of that you pay and at what rate you pay. So, certain businesses that aren't considered pass-through businesses, which are the larger businesses and corporations, they get some tax breaks here under the president's and the GOP's plan. But these small businesses, you could argue, aren't really receiving any tax benefit at all because they're being penalized for being small operators, 1- and 2-man operations, which basically is almost a disregarded entity in terms of the IRS. It's legally important to have an LLC as a small business. It's not tax advantageous, but there ought to be some tax advantages too, at least for small businesses that have at least one employee that's not a direct family member. There ought to be something added to this to give it an incentive to hire people, but also at the same time, in doing so, reducing their taxes. This really shows a bit of delusion or detachment on the part of the Republicans. And while I don't agree with Ron Johnson saying I won't support some reform that is moving us forward, I do think if he can use it as leverage to get that corrected, it will have been a heavy lifted load and a task well done.
Brian Crabtree joining us as we continue on here at KIDO Talk Radio. As we get ready for the silly slow time of the year, Brian, what do you expect to happen out of Washington as most folks are going back to their districts?
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see. I think in Washington, if you were thinking of this current time that we're in and the needs that the American people have, and this were a business, not a government, then the business would be buckling down to not only serve the people, because it's a critical time. You've got tax reform, you've got health care. People are beginning to look at their renewals if they have the option available in some parts of the country. They're looking at greatly increased health care prices. If this were a business, they'd be hard at work working overtime trying to solve the problems. Instead, it's typical Washington. The calendar says we're supposed to check out of here on X date, so that's what we'll do. And that does not lead by example. That basically is just more of the same, and that's part of the swamp. I think I don't expect a whole lot. They go home, they hold a town hall, they get yelled at. It's the same old sheet of music. And what they really need to be doing is figuring out how to get the Republicans together while we know they have a shot, because the rate things are going, 2018 could be a bad year for Republicans if they don't get something done, and namely tax reform. But they've also got to get health care done too, or I think they're going to pay the polls late next year.
How do you see it going next year, by the way?
Well, if they can get health care, and I don't expect to repeal and replace, but if they can get some health care reforms and they can get a decent tax package done that lowers corporate taxes to repatriate money back to America, $2 to $3 trillion is the estimate of what would come back, some of which would get invested and trickle into the economy. If they can repair some of the individual mandates, I think it's a good thing that they are attempting to strip that out of Obamacare in the course of this tax bill. That is a tax reform, and it's one that would affect me and other people, millions of other people, in a positive way. If they can get some of those things done, they have to get it all done, but if they get some of it done and say, yes, we've done health care reforms, yes, we've done tax reform, even if it's not to the level that the far right really wants, then I think they'll be fine. The Democrats really don't have a leader. Who is their leader? Barack Obama? Really, perhaps, but he's kind of on the sidelines. Hillary Clinton, she's a complete embarrassment. Donna Brazil's blowing the whistle. DNC Chair Perez, he's really, to me, ineffective. He was a token guy that they chose, and I'm not upset that he's Hispanic, but I think they chose him because he's Hispanic, not because he was the best qualified individual. He was just the first Hispanic available, because they keep trying to go at this identity politics. And, of course, their main policy, and I don't mean this to be facetious or to sound like a broken record, is to oppose Trump at all costs. So if your only policy is to oppose the sitting president and you don't have good leadership, in fact, it's very listless right now, they'd probably be well served to have Barack Obama, because not even he is involved at this level, at this point, to a level that's meaningful. It's going to be very hard for Democrats to do much of anything in 2018 unless the Republicans hand it to them on a silver platter, and that will be by the way of inaction. And that's really the key linchpin here. If we don't have some meaningful legislation and reform conducted and finished by April or May, it could be, in Obama's old terms, a shellacking to come for the Republicans.
Brian Crabtree joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. So what do you make of Alabama?
You got about 2 hours on that one. Here's what I make of it. I'm tired of being manipulated by people coming out of the woodworks with embellished stories. What I know is this. When there is a victim, it's always worse to the victim than what really happened. Not always, but most of the time. When there is a villain, it's always less what the villain did than what really happened. So let's call, for the sake of argument, Roy Moore the villain, and let's call some of these ladies the victim. I believe them in some sense that Roy Moore pursued young women. What I don't know is that how 40 years later, if you remember you were 14 or 17 or 20, and if you kind of, batted an eye or two, lied about your age or didn't, I don't know all these things. No one's asked the question, so we don't get the privilege of the context and details because, God forbid, we question someone who accuses another person. So with that said, my new rule of thumb, because there's so many of these sexual harassment cases and it's making my head spin, if it didn't happen in the last 5 to 10 years, and you're just now telling me, I question, number one, is the spirit of this motive political, or is the motive finally coming out because you feel it's safe to do so given what's happening in the media? I don't know, and I can't speak to someone's heart. So for the sake of political purposes, what I make of Alabama is that if I were an Alabama citizen, I would choose the candidate, because they're all flawed. We're all sinners. We're all flawed. I'd choose the candidate that I think would best represent what I want to see happen in Washington. Absent someone that's a real moral leader and that has been something of a saint, which is you're hard pressed to find that in any political circles, then I've got to really stop judging people from a standpoint of their quality as a human being. And I've started really got to look at what policies do I want to have reflected in Washington. It's sad to say that, but that's what I do. And also, if I were in Alabama, I would use the pillow test. Can I sleep at night with my vote? I couldn't sleep at night if I didn't vote. I don't think I could sleep at night if I voted for a Democrat who's going to get in lockstep with Nancy Pelosi and some of the extremely destructive and inhumane policies they have. So I'm left between the choice of a potential pedophile and a destructive Democrat. I mean, how do you choose between that? I think you have to look at the fact that these are still just allegations, none of which have ever been taken to court, none of which has been proven. I believe in innocent until proven guilty, regardless of how mounting the allegations are. And so therefore it's a policy decision, and that's it. That's Alabama and what I make of it.
What do you make, though, of the Republican establishment and, jumping into this thing and guilty till presumed innocent? You live in Atlanta. I've lived in Alabama for several years. A very different vibe than the politically correct Politburo that we read and hear so much about in Washington, Brian?
Well, I believe this society is made up of a bunch of hypocrites, but the majority of Americans have become hypocritical. And let me explain what I mean by that. They don't so much believe in what they say. Every time there's a shooting, pray for Sutherland, pray for San Antonio, pray for Orlando, pray for Boston, pray for New York, pray for Charleston, And I think those people, a lot of times that tweet out those hashtags are a bunch of freaking hypocrites, because I don't think they say one prayer. I think they just say it, move on, check mark, look at me. A few thousand people saw that I'm really the great Christian involved in this, and I'm really sad. It's the same thing happening here with these Republicans. They're basically saying, pray for Alabama by saying, we think Roy Moore should step down. Well, by saying that, they're saying, I distance myself from this kind of egregious behavior. And the bottom line is they're just simply, some of them are doing the same, have done some of the same kind of stuff, and at the same time, I don't think they really care, to be honest. I think they're saying it to make sure they don't get labeled as part of the Roy Moore crowd. That's it. Once he gets to the Senate, if he wins, I think the Republicans will do the same thing with Roy Moore they've done on health care, which is nothing.
Brian Crabtree, Talk40.com. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Great to be with you.
All right. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning here. Thank you all for joining us. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I do want to thank so many of you that came out and donated to Miller's mission and to make a big difference in the lives of so many people in the Treasure Valley. Like I said, every year we do this, and particularly the one in November kind of beats on me a little, but it really makes me appreciate every one of you that are working right now in the outdoors, that you go out, whether it's road construction, whether it's building homes. I think we should get some of our politicians from your ranks instead of the, folks in this profession or that profession. Like I said, it is amazing the tenacity that you have to work in the outdoors. So thank you very much. And there were so many people that complimented this program. I want to thank Ray Amaya and our promotions team for doing a great job. But really, the heroes are you and your gifts. Now, the Boise Rescue Mission had their banquet on Saturday. They'll have their one in Boise on Wednesday. And when you go in and you see all the people eating and you see Mark Johnson from Channel 7 singing, it's something that doesn't exist in most parts of America. You go down to Salt Lake. Salt Lake's a great city. You have a much different, a much dire homeless situation there. You don't have the unique partnerships that you have here in the Treasure Valley. Seattle, where they have to pressure wash the sidewalks. It's funny when people say, hey, let's go to Seattle. No, I really don't want to go somewhere where every day they have to pressure wash the urine off the sidewalks. It's not that appealing. Portland, the same thing. But here in the Treasure Valley, people care. And it's amazing, whether it's the Boise Rescue Mission, St. Vincent de Paul that's doing their turkey drive this week, or, in fact, the Interfaith Sanctuary, or what have you. It's amazing. And like I said, it was just a blessing to be a small part of it. So thank you very much for those that donated. We really, really appreciate it. Today, what are we going to talk about? It's interesting. I had a lot of political folks come by, and we were talking a little bit about the governor's race and how it's heating up, and the race for the 1st Congressional District as well. And you take a look at this. Last week, Representative Perry decided she's going to jump in, and whether or not she'll be, the front runner or not, along with Russ Fulcher and David Leroy, I think is interesting. And again, this year coming up is going to be the biggest year we've had in politics, just based on the fact that there's so many people getting in. And yet in Idaho, we don't have the money tree in the backyard. We don't have those unlimited funds. So, this is the money primary going on right now, where people are looking for money, looking for supporters. And if you're really running in the 1st Congressional District, I don't know if there's much left. So we'll see if there's out-of-state spending. Now, the governor's race, even though Governor Otter is not running, he's going to have a big impact on the race. I'll tell you about that in a minute. 626, Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Time to get you to work safe. And Kevin Miller in the morning here. I was talking to a bunch of political folks as we were hanging out and collecting turkeys at the Walmart on Garrity and Franklin. And we were going back and forth on this issue involving the governor. Even though Governor Otter we haven't really seen much of him. He hasn't been around. Brad Little's been taking his place. There is something looming. There is a big influence. Now, not only do we expect Governor Otter to once again be campaigning for Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, on the other hand, he's got this thing called the Otter PAC. And back when we had folks that covered politics here in the Gem State for the print or the digital, they would go out and they would report these things. And hopefully we'll get some folks back in the saddle to do that. But the Otter PAC is a political action committee. I think it's, 3 or 4 years old. And they don't really have to disclose, to my knowledge, they don't have to disclose how much money is in the Otter PAC. And the Otter PAC, conservatives have taken out many conservatives in the legislature. It's why we got Obamacare through, because you didn't have Speaker Denny at the time. You had Speaker Bedke, who was more friendly to that, marshaled things through. Some say the Otter PAC is responsible for getting rid of conservatives, and we see the conservatives fighting back, but the Otter PAC is going to be a big player in the campaign. Now, I don't know if they're limited to how much money they can give, but if you have millions of dollars sitting on the bench, well, obviously that means you can run commercials. That means you can run, television ads, radio ads. You can put out direct mail and everything else. That's the Otter PAC. That is what we're looking at here. And nobody's really covered that. Nobody has said, well, what is the governor going to do? And who controls the Otter PAC? Is that a group? Is that a consortium of politicians? Or is it really just Governor Otter? Or is it the people that have donated money? Again, nobody's doing that story. And you're going, Kevin, this is one of the slowest weeks of the year. Is this the best you got? And I think it kind of is. Look, there's also, and coming up, we'll talk about Charles Manson. But what are we going to say? He was the devil. And he scared a lot of people, and he did horrible things, and now he's dead. And maybe he's, down there in the red zone. And I'm not talking about the NFL, right? We can talk about that. But I go back to this. The Otter PAC is going to impact us. There hasn't really even been that much of a story on it at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And we'll get your thoughts on that. We'll get your thoughts on Representative Perry jumping in. Does gender matter in the race for the 1st Congressional CD? And you're thinking to yourself, well, Kevin, this is pretty much uber politics. It's Monday. It's pretty tough to go through that. It is to a degree, but on the other hand, again, we've taken a week to give back, and we'll continue to give back. And by the way, you can always continue to contribute to the Boise Rescue Mission at boiserm.org. We would love to have you continue to help them out and to make a difference in the lives of folks here in the Treasure Valley. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Truex Jr. takes his first cup at Homestead.
Putting an
exclamation point on a near-perfect season.
The call on NBC. Much of Sunday's final race had people thinking either Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, or Brad Keselowski would pick up another title, but coming out of a final pit, Truex Jr. was able to punch forward for the first time all day.
I just found a line that worked for my car with 20 laps to go that I couldn't find all day long. I'd searched for it all day, could never find it. And then with 20 to go, all of a sudden it was like I found it.
Sunday's race was also the final for Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's retiring. It was also the final race for Danica Patrick as a full-timer. In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
And I know what you're saying, Kevin. What's the big deal about NASCAR? But there is a significance to Martin Truex Jr. winning. And the reason why is Martin Truex Jr. is part of the Denver Mattress team. And the Denver Mattress team is based, you guessed it, in Colorado. That's right, Colorado. The only team in NASCAR based outside of the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, a city that I'm very familiar with from my days in North Carolina. And, you know, when we take a look at the West and the pride we have in our region, it is something that we should, I suppose, you know, give a little props to, that Martin Truex Jr. won, because his team doesn't have multiple cars. His team is a one-car team. It's not a big conglomerate, and it's, again, basically right out in the West. So congratulations to Truex, 37 years old, and I can remember reading about Truex when Dale Earnhardt had him on the old not the Winston circuit, the Busch series. It's been a long road to him, so it's great to see someone from the West doing very well. And like I said, Martin Truex is a heck of a guy. His longtime girlfriend, Sherry Pollux, she's battling stage 3 ovarian cancer. The second time she's undergone treatment for the disease. It was nice to see them hugging and such, and we'll see how it plays out. By the way, Furniture Row Racing is the racing team that Truex was part of. Incredible journey for Martin Truex Jr. Great to see that team out of Denver winning. Other news of note, Charles Manson is dead. If you can remember Helter Skelter, if you can remember Living in Fear, if you can remember those times, we'd like to hear from you at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Denied parole 12 times. 12 times. Amazing when you think about this. The cult leader, dead at 83.
He was admitted to hospital outside of the prison last week, and the expectation then from sources in the prison and in the hospital was that he wouldn't emerge from that hospital alive. He'd been in hospital back in January and was too ill to undergo surgery back then, and was taken back to prison. But it appeared this was expected, and if any death can go unmourned, this will probably be the one. He remained, until his death, one of the most notorious prisoners in the United States.
There we have it. Charles Manson dead. Of course, those of you that don't remember Helter Skelter, here are the details.
He had complete control over his followers.
When I stand on the mountain and I say, do it, it gets done.
And that was never more clear than what happened during a 2-night rampage in 1969. On August 8th, 4 followers killed for Manson. First, pregnant actress Sharon Tate, and 5 others. On the front door, the word pig written in Tate's blood. The next night, a businessman and his wife.
It was almost unbelievable because it was more like a slaughterhouse.
What followed was a trial that gripped a nation. Manson and his followers faced first-degree murder charges. A jury convicted all of them.
There we have it. Charles Manson, a special place in hell at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. In other news, if you're a fan of the Oakland Raiders, even though they're not having a good season, they are making news. You have Marshawn Lynch from the Seattle Seahawks. You remember Marshawn, beast mode, and the man that could have been the next spokesman for Skittles. Well, apparently they were down in Mexico getting walloped by the New England Patriots. And old Marshawn decided that he wasn't going to stand for the national anthem. That's right. Marshawn decided, in my opinion, he don't love America. So Marshawn sits for the national anthem, and he stands for the Mexican anthem. Now, remember all of the human rights abuses, all the narco-terrorists, all the reasons why people are fleeing Mexico, and Marshawn showing excellent judgment here, decides that he's going to diss the United States of America, where you have freedom of the press, you have freedom to dissent, you have these things, and Marshawn Lynch deciding that he's not down with the United States of America, and he wants to be respectful of the folks in Mexico. Now, the President of the United States has tweeted a couple of shots on that. Look, I think the President, with all due respect, has better things to do. He truly is the voice of the people. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, maybe just people in the NFL, and I know this is a little brash this morning, maybe they're just stupid. Maybe they have the sin of hubris. They believe their own hype. You know, you can recall the NFL when they would do those commercials for the United Way. Because of you, it works for all of us, the United Way. You can recall the NFL when they, would have, great role models. And today, the NFL is, embracing the counterculture. And we see it with, empty stadiums. And maybe instead of getting the guaranteed money, which is going to dry up pretty soon because the ratings are going down, maybe they should just start getting a percentage of what they bring in from the stadiums. And let's face it, when you make millions of dollars, what type of grasp do you have on reality when you live in your gated communities? I think the guy that has the best grasp of it all is Donald Trump. I mean, here's this guy that graduated Wharton School of Business, that's been on TV, that is married a supermodel, that has these great kids, and he can reflect what we'll be saying around the Thanksgiving Day dinner table, right? I mean, he will reflect that. And on the other hand, you have these athletes that have worked their way up from very humble origins. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Is it too much to ask, not only in this country, but in places around the world, that when you're representing America, and yes, when you're playing in Mexico and you're with the NFL, you are representing America, to stand for the national anthem? Is it that horrific when you think of the service members and all the sacrifice going on there, even as we speak, people that are going to be away from home? And we all have a special sentiment for those people that are away from home, not to stand for the national anthem. I mean, let's face it, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, it's an insult. And I know some members of the community will say, well, Kevin, that's their freedom to be offensive. People are not buying the NFL. People are not buying it indeed. Now, again, we're going to play the national anthem here for you just for a moment to show you how much we love America and how much we honor the people that are serving in America. For those serving in Idaho and abroad, we proudly salute America here at KIDO Talk Radio. How can anybody with a brain have an issue with the national anthem and think sitting in Mexico and standing for the Mexican national anthem, well, we want to show some respect? What about the people that continue to show respect by sacrificing, by being in Korea at this time? Not a friendly place, or in Afghanistan. And their highlight of the day is maybe that Facebook time call when you're FaceTiming with someone back home. That's what they look for. And instead of watching their heroes play football, and in the case of the Oakland Raiders actually show up, this is what they get. I mean, is it too much to ask for people And maybe the fact of the matter is, when you talk to your kids and grandkids at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, when they say, why should I stand for the national anthem? Well, you should, to make a difference. You should, to respect our great country. Coming up next, how safe do you feel when you go to church? Is it time to pack? And do you pack? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And we continue on. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Is it time to bring your guns to church? Now, you don't have to self-report, but there is one church in Florida saying, why not?
The River at Tampa Bay Church now has a sign posted with a stark warning, quote, "We are heavily armed," unquote. The sign goes on to assure any would-be attackers that their place of worship is not a gun-free zone. The posting is garnering plenty of attention on social media following the Texas church massacre where 26 people were killed. The gunman in that mass shooting, you may recall, was chased from the scene by an armed Good Samaritan. The mass killer was later found dead in his car. Tom Graham, Fox News.
So when it comes to being safe at church at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, do you feel comfortable carrying a weapon? Would you feel comfortable, because of the school shootings, the church shootings, of bringing your own weapon to church? Should church be gun-free zones? Do gun-free zones work? Now, my own personal opinion at 580-5436, 580-KIDO is I trust the citizens. I trust my fellow Idahoans. I trust my fellow coworkers more so than I do the criminals. Well, Kevin, do you carry a gun? No, because when you have the physique of a bell pepper, there's no worry about that. You are a living weapon. But on the other hand, do I feel that people should be able to carry? Yes, because 99.999% of the people that are legal registered gun owners understand the rules, have a great sense of society, have a great sense of security, and understand the need to preserve order. The people that want to disarm us, well, how's that working out in Chicago? How's that working out in other parts of the country? How's that working out when we're taking a look at people not being able to defend themselves? Doesn't the Second Amendment give you the right to do this? See, I don't understand how workplaces can ban you carrying a weapon into work. Well, there's going to be shootouts. I don't think so. I think that's just hyperbole from the left. But again, sleepyheads, I know it's early. I know it's a slow week, but at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, I'd like to hear from you next. Time for traffic and weather together. And we continue on. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Going back to the idea of guns in church. Of course, you wouldn't hear this in Oregon. You wouldn't hear this in Hawaii. You wouldn't hear this in Chicago. But if it comes down to it, why wouldn't you be able to carry in church? Why wouldn't the congregation allow you and want you to defend yourself when it comes down to these issues, right? But it seems to me only the people that have problems with guns, and they want us to be victims of it, right? Let's go to pro-life with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I heard you wanted to talk to me next.
Sure. Go ahead.
Anyway, you were talking about...
Hold on. You're next. You're first. Welcome to one of the slowest weeks of the year, Thanksgiving week, on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you were talking about the governor's race, and it's a little bit hard to predict because if you go look at the voting statistics of the Democrat Party, in the primaries, there's hardly any Democrats voting. And a good percentage of those Democrats will register as Republicans and come and vote for the person they want in their, more fits a Democrat political profile in the Republican Party. They've been doing that for a long, long time. And so anybody running in a major race like the governor's race, they have to take that into consideration. And I think that gives an edge to Mr. Little and even Mr. Tommy Alquist.
Well, let's go back to the money. And when you think of the Otter PAC and Governor Otter, what do you think he's going to do with all that money?
Well, he's going to throw it in Brad Little's pocket, in his campaign. But here's what I think. I think that what's happening is the voters are getting a little bit more sophisticated, and they're not just buying anything in ads on the TV and the radio and newspapers and whatever. They're starting to really look into what people represent and believe. Hopefully that will be the case, and so money will be kind of neutralized. So that's what I'm hoping for. But the media has lied so much now that people are being very turned off by political media, political ads, and they're going to decide for themselves outside of money. So that's what I think. I think we're getting smarter.
Well, I think, again, it's going to come down to big money and the message, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. Maybe you're right. I don't know everything, of course. I just try to figure out what the truth is. Go with that.
Well, welcome to the home of the truth.
Yeah, well, hey, when you go to the Boise Rescue Mission and do what you do, that is probably the most important thing you do all year. When you have non-governmental rescuing of people, especially spiritually, and of course they help them physically, but a government can't rescue people spiritually, but the Boise Rescue Mission can. And that's why you have to tie faith to health, education, welfare, recreation, medicine. If you don't, you have a lost civilization.
Pro-Life, thank you for the call.
All right, see you.
All right, let's go to Brian in Nampa with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Hey, Kevin. First, I have to apologize. I'm in Turkey this year. If it wasn't for my good wife, I would probably be on the street eating one of those turkeys. So, apologize that I couldn't help you out this year. Hopefully, if my health gets a lot better, I will next.
Well, we appreciate just the thoughts, brother.
Yeah. The church thing and the thing back east with the accusations, you know that I have a history of dealing with women that were abused. And what the media doesn't want to talk about and nobody wants to talk about is the responsibility of the parents to protect their children. I think the hardest thing the victims need to deal with is the reality that they were either not taught or not protected by their parents. And I know that because in all the situations I dealt with, including my mother and my wife, that was part of the problem. And government, religion, nothing can make up for parents that aren't aware and don't learn how to protect their children. I wish they would address that. Now, to your church thing, don't you love being in America? I pack at church. Sometimes I don't pack at church. I do the same thing I do with the seatbelt thing. I get in my car. I guarantee you I've got a gun in my truck. And I know all my family has got a gun in their truck. But what we do is we say a prayer and make a decision then whether or not we want to take it in to the church. And you might be surprised why I'm saying this, because it's dangerous to be shooting a lot of bullets with a lot of people around. You still there?
I am, Brian. Thank you very much. Got to run. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.